The wife pulls the judge role and there's a divorce. Do you solve anything with the judge role, really? Well, sometimes you might make the male role become weak, and he might pull some demand authority to defend himself. But if you contempt the male role to pull demand authority, all you're actually going to end up with is a 50-50 marriage, which is actually two contestants fighting. Now, in a employer-employee situation, how long am I going to tolerate this if I'm the boss? Not very long. I'm going to say, well, I don't particularly like this, let's stop. And you're through. How are we going to accomplish all of this? How are we going to have our actual roles, our actual structure, our prediction, and convince the female role that she doesn't have to have the judge role? Now, by the way, what causes the female role to give up the judge role? When society says, here it is, on a gold platter, and society also says something else, not only here it is, but how much will we stand behind you? The whole army. In other words, the entire army is behind the judge role 100%. Now, how are you going to get a female to give up a role that the entire army's back up? And by the way, if you don't believe the army's back of it, just let a man who owns a warehouse with a picket line around it, with the merchandise becoming obsolete, hire some men to break a picket line to get that merchandise. And if the local police cannot contain that, what will the United States government do? The Guard will come in and protect who? The picket line. So in other words, when I say the whole army, I mean it. We actually know that the female here knows that this is exactly protected by the entire government. We want to do something tonight. We want the female to, of her own will, do what with the judge role? Give it up. She's going to say, I choose you without any rights, without any worry about the concept of fairness. I do not care anything about equality, and democracy is the last concern I've got. Really, does a man have a chance any other way except role relationship? No, some dictators have tried it. And can you even win as a dictator? Is there such a thing as actual physical force in the male role that can win? I think once a man thoroughly understands that there's no way he can win physically, he's on his way to success. And by the way, can he win without her? You try running an organization producing $500,000 worth of goods without anybody. In any organization that I am going to actually think about right now, can I operate without a female role? And by the way, the very problems we start out with of time and space, is it essential that I have a female role to solve the problems of time and space? We're putting a problem here now. We're saying that he can't win by physical force, and he can only win with a female role, and he can't win if she's got a judge role. And he's going to have to do something to convince her that she doesn't want this anymore. All right, the first actual step to develop a unity relationship will be, basically, after the role relationship is established, will be empathy. We're going to diagram it with a pie-shaped wedge into the female, which means that the male role is now totally abandoned his own role. And by the way, what's that do to society right off? They say, well, we're trying to police this, and he's already deserted his own position. What happens to the balance of our teeter-totter board? In other words, we pulled a move that has been so shocking that society does not know what to do they? So they sit back and they say, let's watch this one. In other words, now you are inside the female. All right, now, the way to do it is to go from the male role into the female role Now, I know a lot of people say, well, is this proper? Do I lose my dignity when I do this? I'll give you an illustration. God the Father goes into Christ. Does Christ go into a Christian? I know when I was a little tiny boy, I heard a little song, Jesus Come Into My Heart. I thought, boy, this is a big job. How's somebody real big going to come in? But in our whole world relationship, does the bigger always go into the lesser? Remember the night we studied role relationship, we went through all the physical aspects? Every single one of those, which is bigger? Take a hinge on a door. You know the little metal thing that goes down through the middle? Is that the smallest part of the hinge? Always remember that the more important goes into the lesser. And in sexual intercourse, the man goes into the woman. Then who's the greater? You follow the law all the way through. Of course the man's the greater. All right, now, does this mean that the male role has to go into the female role? And that's what we call empathy. Now, when we go into the female role, how pure do we go in? Can we take a single, solitary motive of our own with us? No. Now, go through the male functions. Does the male then perform the act of love, which is death? And at the point of the act of love of death, what does she do with the judge role? What does she need a judge role for to judge somebody that's dead? In other words, if he is dead, is there anything for her to be afraid of? If the salesman has died to the commission, can I trust him? Do I need a judge role playing the female role of a customer if the salesman is dead now? All right, when the boss has died to his position, which means that he will give up his position to protect you, do I have to have a judge role anymore as an employee? In other words, the quickest way to get rid of the judge role is for the male role to die so the female role doesn't have anything to judge anymore. Then she does what? She surrenders the judge role. And in doing that, she has given up her criteria, she's given up her informational authority, and as she's given up the actual assumption that knowledge is power, and the minute she gives that up, she accepts what is power? Positional authority alone without earned authority. Now, to run a tremendous organization, do your employees have to believe in positional authority alone as the reason for submission? And the answer is yes, because are there situations when your earned authority will not come across very clear? And if they're waiting only for earned authority and they happen to don't see it, might they pull a judge role? And aren't we also saying that when I surrender a judge role, have I also surrendered the requirements that you have earned authority? Because I'm going to be submissive to who? Earned authority or the position? In other words, do I want men in my organization that are only submissive because of my earned authority? No. I might have a headache. I might act awful. In other words, could I do all kinds of things to ruin earned authority here? Would the organization fall apart? This female then has to believe what? It's the position that he's in that we're going to respect irregardless of what he does today. Now, I realize earned authority helps. But do I teach my boys to respect me because of earned authority? No, not at all. They're going to respect me because of positional authority. And this is the only way we can go. Therefore, the female role now has given up the judge role, given up informational authority, given up the assumption that knowledge is power, and says that the only power is delegated authority. Now, let's be very frank. We're talking about all power coming from God now. Are we not? And do we have any more power coming up from the bottom? All you have to do then to have power in this particular relationship is have the position. And by the way, did you know it's interesting that what goes with this position is responsibility, whether you have earned authority or not? Because the one who delegated the authority allows responsibility. So, I am in the male role, I am in the female. The female has just given up everything that she's probably given her entire life to obtain. And she's now at the total mercy of the male role, and she's only performed all of this because he died. Well, he's safe now because he's not after anything. Now, can she begin to believe that he might be interested in more than his own personal goals now? Then might he also be under somebody else who's carrying out another plan of action that he is submissive to? Now is she safe? And we say then, if a woman can understand what we have just discussed, she'll find freedom. And this is the only way in the world that the female role can have freedom. With all of these other concepts, do you suppose there was freedom? No. Bondage. Total bondage. But now that she is in a total submissive role, depending on him entirely, we say now she's free. And it's interesting to know that when he's in her shoes and she's submitted completely, does she hide anything from him? Nothing whatsoever. Therefore, is she an open book? Can he read freely? Right now, this solves a lot of problems because it isn't long until he finds out what she wants. If you let a salesman come in and you find out that he's dead to the commission, is it safe to tell him everything? What if it happens that you don't need the product? What will happen when you tell him everything? You won't sell it to him. You won't have any actual desire to sell it to him. And what if he wants to buy it? You won't let him buy it. Can you believe that? This is the way it works. In other words, you have decided that this female role is now for you to take care of. And if you're taking care of somebody, are you going to sell them something they don't need? No. I launched a smile, far out it sailed on life's wide troubled sea, and many more than I could count came sailing back to me. I clasped a hand while whispering that clouds will melt away. I felt my life was very blessed all through the hours that day. I sent a thought of happiness where it was needed sore, and very soon thereafter found joy adding to my store. I wisely shared my slender hoard, toil-earned coins of gold, but presently it flowed right back, increased 100-fold. I helped another climb a hill, a little thing to do, and yet it brought a rich reward, a friendship that was new. I think each morning when I rise of how I may achieve. I know by serving I advance, by giving I receive. That was written many years ago by Thomas Gaines. And it also, I think, illustrates what we're talking about when we say the law of fair exchange. Now, before we go into the law of fair exchange, let's find out how we found this want. It's, to me, a fascinating thing to look at a human being and determine a want. Let's do it by going back to our affectional field diagram. We're going to real quickly devise a spice cake. Now, this is a complicated pattern. In other words, as I am actually looking at this person, even assume I'm a psychiatrist and I've talked to them for a year, 1 hour a day. I still don't know them. Well, let's carry it on further. You've lived with yourself all your life. Do you know who you are? In other words, we're in the process of learning. But wants are a simple thing. Here's an illustration. I walk into a restaurant and there's a man eating a New York cut steak. Do I know what his needs are? Well, they could be physical. He might be hungry. They could be psychological. He might be trying to achieve some type of performance of eating so many in an hour. Or they could be sociological. Somebody important might have just walked in and he's already had one and he's eating another one to impress them. Or maybe he's had 2 other types of food and now he's trying out for variety. In other words, do we know what he needs? What's he want? He wants to eat a steak. In other words, it's simple to know what we want. It's very complicated to know what we need. They were taking the freeway out right near the college, and I was driving by one morning, early 7:30. The sun just came up. And there was a girl on an old charred foundation painting. Did you realize that she could be going to sell the painting for money to buy food? She could be actually sublimating her sexual desire. She could be achieving for a psychological desire. She could want someone to admire her painting and be satisfying a sociological desire, or maybe she's been doing other things in the morning and this morning she's doing something for variety. Do we know what her need is in painting? But what does she want to do that morning at 7:30? Paint. Can you see how easy it is to know what people want? After I have arrived at the spice cake, found out the want which arises out of the spice cake. In fact, I like to visualize the wants as candles on the cake. I can count them, I can look at them, I can visualize them, but I don't know what's down inside the cake. It's interesting also to know that when he sees this want, and he has love for the female role, doesn't he want to give her what she wants? I mean, wouldn't this be the natural result, to turn around and give her what she wants? But if he really loves her, would he want to ruin her? And always remember, if I give somebody what they want, do I ruin them? Absolutely. In other words, I cannot give you tonight what you want without ruining you. Now he's got a problem here. He knows what she wants, he wants to give it to her, and yet he does not want to ruin her. What? You don't understand why it would ruin her? To give her what she wants? Well, then you've killed all of her dignity and her individuality. In business, we call this paternalism. And you want to go back and study, we find out that management's reaction to unions would be to act in a paternal nature, and would that bring the unions on just as strong as the other method of the actual sweatshops? Can you visualize them as 2 extremes? And as role relationship and the law of fair exchange is the middle, the optimum. I think this will become more clear as we develop role relationship as it leads to the law of fair exchange. Right? If I can't give her the want that she has, and I see that she'll never be happy unless she has it, I'm motivated to do what? I have to figure out a way where she can buy this particular want from me. In other words, all I'm doing is allowing her to have what she wants and keep her self-respect, to keep her individuality, to keep her dignity. Now, if I see a bum on the street and he's got his hand out and I give him some money, it proves one thing: I'm greater than he. He, likewise, is a nobody because can he pay me back? Remember when we talked about the Marshall Plan or the Lend-Lease program? And we went into this whole area of giving without allowing the person to return the gift and setting up a system of obligation. And then this always ends up with ill will. If he turns around and gives her everything, do they have a law of fair exchange? What happens when I receive something from you and I have no way to pay you back? An obligation that can't be paid back turns to hatred. His problem is he's got to figure out how to give her what she wants and how to make her happy so she can feel like she's worthy. By the way, this is quite a problem for God with man. And he did a beautiful job of it. Now all you have to do when you play the male role is do as well. So basically what I've got to do is find a system where she can negotiate with me for this want. So therefore, am I going to have to find something that I have that she wants and something that she has that I want? Now, I've already discovered what she wants. Now I do something very interesting. I look through everything she owns, and what am I looking at her ownership for? I want to find if there's something that she owns that I need. Now, if I can find something that she owns that I need, could I offer an exchange? And then we have what we call a law of fair exchange. But this introduces me to a want that we can actually exchange. It's interesting to know my motivation is what purpose? To give her what she wants. Now it's real simple. What I'm going to do is put up here the actual want. And I'm going to look over in my own life, and I'm going to find out if there isn't something over there that she wants, that I have, then I'm going to look in her life and find out if there's something that she'd like to discard that I would want. So I'm going to set up two thermometers. This one will be the male role. This one will be the female role. And I'm going to look for something in the male role that I don't value anymore that the female would love to have. And I'm going to look for something that the female is about ready to throw away that I give my eye teeth for. Now once I found these points, are we in a wonderful situation? Something that she has little value for, what do I think of it? It's essential that I have it. And something that she values tremendously, I'm about to give away anyway. Now we say that after this law of fair exchange has taken place, are both parties richer? Has not something that was here on her value scale, something at point A, gone to point B? If I move something on your value scale from point A to point B, would you be richer? Right? Point C to point D in the male role, is he now richer? Now, does she have dignity? Because have we given her anything? There's been actually no gift made. Are either party obligated? No. And do both people have self-respect? Right, now what do you say could be worth nothing to me? A compliment. And if I don't give it to you, what am I going to do with it? Throw it away. I mean, I can't use it for anything else because you're the only one that's wearing that particular coat that I happen to like right now. If I withhold the compliment, have I lost anyway? Right? If I give it to you, what's it worth? You've been waiting for 3 years for it. I mean, this is everything. The law of fair exchange can be illustrated by two men. Visualize that we're up in a high tree and we watch these two men walk along through the jungle. And one has 2 cows. He has all the milk he wants, all the butter he wants, all the cottage cheese he wants. The next man has 2 horses and he's leading them. Evidently he's ridden them all he wants. As they meet in the clearing, one man leaves with a horse and a cow. The other man leaves with a horse and a cow. And as they disappear into the brush, which one got the best of the deal? Both. So we define the law of fair exchange, meaning when 2 people negotiate, when they exchange, and when both people get the best of the deal. Therefore, is there a loser? Under contest, we said there was always a winner and a loser. Under the law of fair exchange, both people are winners. You see, we're using this diagram tonight counterclockwise. The average American uses the same diagram, only clockwise. In other words, I should have an arrow going this way if I'm going counterclockwise, which means the last thing to happen is for this to come to me. If I were going to use the diagram clockwise, the first thing I would do would be to go after what I want. And we call that stealing. There's many other ways you can do it that won't be quite so bold, but it really means I'm going after what I want without regard for the person who owns it. But when I go counterclockwise, I'm going after what I want because I'm trying to help the person who owns it. In diagramming the law of fair exchange, we have two problems. One problem is shortchanging, and the other problem is obligation. And I'd like to demonstrate this for you. Let's take your fountain pen and my pencil. And let's assume that the value I have on my pencil is 5, and the value I have on your pen is 10. And if I would exchange with you, I would come out plus 5. Let's assume that you value my pencil at 92, and you value your pen at 90. If we exchange, you'll come out with a plus 2. It's interesting. If we exchange, who gets the best of the deal? We both do. Now, if you would think that I would, I can convert my actual points on my value system to dollars. Let's assume that I actually have each point valued at 10 cents apiece. So this comes out to 50 cents. And let's assume that he has each point valued at $1. He comes out with $2. It looks like it was reversed, right? Let's reverse it one more time. He has very little value for money. If he saw something shiny in the street, he wouldn't walk across the street to even look at it. But if I saw something shiny a block away, I'd go look. We change this as we grow older. How many here tonight would not actually, if you saw a penny in the street, pick it up? Let me see your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Isn't that interesting? I could go higher. How many would pass up a nickel? 2. How many pass up a dime? No millionaires here tonight. Is it possible that there are people who wouldn't even pick up $1? Sure. Then we say this is a relative thing because we each have different value systems. Right now, let's just assume, for an illustration, that I put a value of 90 on his pen. And if we changed, I would increase on a plus 85. Now, would we trade? You'll never get me to trade with him. Not unless you coerce me. If you set up enough of a manipulation here, I might have to yield to it, and I might go ahead. But normally, I will not. And if you did coerce me, and I was stuck in this deal, the next time he tries to deal with me, what do I think he's going to do? Ooh, this is not going to be safe. So we say then that I do not want to be obligated. Now let's use an illustration. Here's a rich aunt. She's a widow. She's a widow because she doesn't know how to love, and that's why her husband died. She's rich because he was thoughtful enough to have insurance. Now, she couldn't get love from him. He's dead, so she's going to get love from relatives. So birthdays roll around, Christmas rolls around, and she buys expensive gifts. Do the little kids like them?